Hi everyone, good evening. Charlotte here from Enriching Environments for Top Tip Tuesday, and welcome to this evening's session about anger. And I'm feeling a little bit nervous about this evening's session because it's such a raw and vulnerable topic to talk about anger, about our rage, about frustration, and it's not something that people talk about very often, particularly the anger, the rage that we can have as parents. Hi, Hital. Good evening. And you know, being a parent is such a high Asil. Being a parent is such a. I read a great quote that becoming a parent gave me a spiritual transformation that I didn't know I need, or something like that. And it's so true, isn't it? Often we're only confronted with our anger or our anger issues or our rage when we become a parent, particularly a parent of young children. And everyone who's coming on has got young children. And I know, I don't know French fries, but I know everyone else who's coming on as well. And so, yeah, this is a really raw and vulnerable topic for me. Only maybe 3 years ago, I realized my anger issues. And when I say anger issues, I don't know anyone who has a positive view of anger, an accepting view of their own anger. It's really, it's something that's not talked about. We are very often, more often than not, probably 99% of people were not role modeled how to deal with anger positively when we were little. Often when we were children, we were rejected or maybe punished when we showed anger. If we grew up in a generation, as the same generation as me, where, you know, it was more children should be seen and not heard, more that Victorian upbringing. So I know, for all the amazing things that my parents did, I know that anger was not something, my frustration is not something that was acceptable. And I think that's a generational thing. You know, I don't think it's anything to do with my parents. I think probably most people would say the same. So I think the thing what I'd really like to start with is that anger itself isn't the problem. I feel that it's our attitude to anger and how we feel about anger, which is actually can be more harmful than anger itself. What's really interesting is if you look online, some places cite anger as being a primary emotion, and some cite anger as being a secondary emotion. And in terms of a neuroscience perspective, I don't know the answer to that. But what I do like is the explanation of it being a secondary emotion, because usually anger is a response, or anger is always a response to something else first, and that stimuli, that trigger, is basically makes us feel powerless or helpless, and that is why we then respond in an angry way. And it feels like in the heat of the moment that anger is a primary emotion. That's what it can feel like to us in the body, but it's actually it's a response to something else has happened, and that's usually when we feel threatened, when we feel shame, when we feel fear, when we feel victimized. Any of those things that can provoke our anger. That's a trigger or a stimuli, as it were. So if we look at anger as not as the problem, it's something that's a reaction to something else, then that can maybe just start us to look at it in a different way. And yeah, so anyone watching, how comfortable are you with your anger? How has it scared you? I know it still scares me. I really shouted at Harry yesterday, and it scared me like the force of my anger, you know, how much I want him to stop what he was doing and how loudly I shouted. And of course, when something like that happens, you know, there's a long process of unpicking that and validating his feelings, validating Olivia's feelings, apologizing and resetting our nervous systems, ensuring that the children's nervous systems are reset when there's an outburst, whether it's anyone, whether it's me or one of them. But that's, I guess, a different topic. But it's very scary for us to experience that rage that we have when we're tired, when we're stressed out, when we're feeling powerless, when we're feeling helpless, when we've asked our child to do something for the millionth time, and we've used every single possible tool in our parenting toolkit, and they still won't do what we need them to do in that moment, and something inside us flicks or switches. And I'm not saying that makes it okay. What I'm saying is that's what makes us human. And there's a lot about being a parent of young children, but I guess a parent of teenagers as well, that can make us feel powerless, can make us feel that we're not being validated, that we're not being heard, they're not being seen. And so it's perfectly normal that we would have these reactions. And what's really important for us to know, and when we start on our healing journey and understanding ourselves and our inner landscape a bit better, what's really, really helpful to know is that when we have those feelings of being shamed or punished or victimized or threatened, when we have those feelings of powerlessness, that's always coming from our inner child. That's coming from something that's happened previously, usually in our childhood, when we had an unmet need, so a need that was not met, and then when we tried to express that need, it wasn't met perhaps in a healthy way, and so we had to suppress it in some way, and then that triggers our inner child. Later, 30, 40 years later, when we're in a scenario with our young child, it takes us back unconsciously back to that feeling of powerlessness that we had as a 2-year-old, as a 3-year-old, as a 4-year-old, as a 5-year-old, as a 6-year-old, whatever age it was. So that's what's really important for us to know, is that we're all wounded children running around in adult bodies, and there's a lot of situations that our inner child can be running the show. That little girl who didn't feel seen or didn't feel heard or didn't feel validated or wasn't able to express her anger, wasn't able to express her frustration. And when we're little, it doesn't necessarily need to be something big, a great injustice. It just matters more. And like us as adults, if we're with a friend or with a partner, often the issue isn't what's actually going on. The issue is whether or not we're being heard, whether or not we're being validated. That to be seen and to be heard as humans, whether it's at work or in a romantic relationship, friendships, or with our children, we all need to be seen and be heard and be validated. And as we said last week, children are validated by our behavior towards them. So we can know that our inner child is looking for something. Often our inner child is running the show when we are angry, when we are frustrated, when we have those big fits of rage, as it were, whether it's our child or somebody else. That is our inner child running the show, and there is an unmet need there. And that's really another one of these little blocks onto understanding why we react as we do and being able to approach it with radical self-compassion. That's really, really important. I'm just going to pour some tea. And I say radical self-compassion because when we start looking at our triggers and what is pushing our buttons as it were. So our children aren't actually pushing our buttons. They're just being children. We're pushing our own buttons. We have something deep within us, probably unconscious, that is triggering us in some way in response to our child's behavior. If our child is fighting, hitting, biting, spitting, being rude to us, swearing at us, all of those things are normal behavior for a child. For a little human whose brain will not yet be fully developed, and the prefrontal cortex particularly, which is problem solving and reasoning, is not fully developed until age 24. So our children's behavior and their resistance to us and hitting us or kicking us or pulling a cat's tail or spitting or swearing, all those things are normal because they are little humans and they are finding their way in the world. Their brain is not yet fully developed. So that is why they behave in the way that they do. And our responses are because of our own stuff. And that can be a really, really hard place to reach that point of acceptance, to start there and go, okay, this is my stuff. My child is being normal. And don't get me wrong, our child's behavior could be completely undesirable. It could be completely inappropriate. And it could be, yes, it could be very rude and all those other things. However, they're a child, we're an adult, and we are being triggered by our own story, our own history, not by the child in front of us, because the child in front of us isn't trying to do anything intentional. You know, a young child isn't possible. It isn't possible for a young child to manipulate, to orchestrate situations. That their brain doesn't have that capacity yet. So it's coming from us, and that's a really hard starting point to come from, actually, to go, okay, this is my stuff, and obviously there's things that add to it. You know, stress hugely adds to it. You know, our zone of tolerance before we get angry will be greatly reduced. You know, if we're poorly, if one of our children are poorly, if we're stressed, we've got too much going on, we've got a lot going on. You know, we're at home all day with young children, we're at home, we're out all day at work, we've had an argument with a co-worker, with our partner, we're a single parent, anything, all of these things can contribute to our window of tolerance being a lot smaller. So, you know, lack of sleep, that's a big one, isn't it, when we have young children? So it's not, it's understandable. It's nothing to be ashamed of. What I really want us to know is that our anger is there. It will come out, and it doesn't need to be negative. We don't need to shame ourselves for it, and we don't need to shame our children for it. It's a part of the human experience, which is something that it feels like in this age of sort of elevated consciousness, we're understanding it a lot more. We're understanding the full breadth of human emotion a lot more. You know, in the sort of spiritual community, the new age spiritual community, everyone used to be talking about love and light the whole time, and that's great. I love love and light as well. But now, you know, I've noticed in the past 5 years, or maybe it's because I've done my own work, but I've noticed recently there's a lot more talk of shadow work, so sort of the dark side of our personalities, and honouring that, and honouring that we are all a balance, a yin, a yang, a light and a day, and a dark and a light. We're all a balance of both, so we can't be all happy and smiley the whole time, and anger is part of that dark side. But I was reading this really beautiful article about how there's a sacred nature of anger. If we can express, you know, injustice, something which is unethical or unjust or immoral or unethical, all of those things, if we can express that in a way that does no harm to someone else, then actually anger can be a really, really powerful tool, because it gives us this power. We come from this place of fear and powerlessness, which is the root of fear. And then we move it sort of up the emotional scale. So hi Rowan, hi everyone who's joining. We move it up the emotional scale to a place of power. So anger can be this sacred, a sacred power, if we can direct it in the same way, if we can express our anger without doing harm to anyone else, without blaming someone else. I mean, I haven't managed to do that yet, okay? So I'm working on that too. Let me have a sip of tea and I'll check I'm on track with my bullet points. And I've got a comment from Harry as well. So Harry has said, how can we control stubborn kids' behaviour? Like when they want something, then their behaviour, their reaction is totally different. Harry, I'm afraid we can't ever control another human being, or we can, but if we look at history and what has happened in history, when we've tried to control other human beings, it never ever ends well. The only path we can have with children is we actually look at ourselves first. So we may have a very stubborn child, so a very willful child, and we can firstly switch that and go, okay, this willful child, this child has a strong sense of justice, a strong sense of them, their preferences, their own body, their likes and their dislikes. This is a very, very powerful tool. It's very hard for us as parents, as caregivers, yeah, I understand, to manage that. But actually a little human who knows who they are and what their boundaries are is going to be somebody who's going to make a difference in the world. So that's a complete 180-degree shift as to sort of how do we control a stubborn child. It's actually looking at the other way of this child has a strong sense of self. How can we work with their personality in order to guide them? Because we don't want to impose our will on another human being. If we try to impose our will on another human being, one of two things happens. Either they become completely compliant and obedient, so they have no sense of direction for themselves. They are just following the status quo, following on with everyone else. And again, if we're talking about history, people who have just followed on and followed rules blindly, again, that ends very, very badly. That is how genocides happen, when we follow things blindly without questioning it, because we haven't been given the skills to question. And the other side of it is, if we do try and control someone in the wrong way rather than guiding them, then the other side of that coin is that they end up rebelling and going completely the other end of the spectrum. So this is really all about guiding our child, leading our child, or any child, trusting in their innate goodness. I talk about this a lot. Trust in the child's innate goodness. A child is learning. As I said before, a child's brain, a human's brain, is not fully developed until age 24. That's when problem solving and reasoning in the prefrontal cortex is fully formed, age 24. So we just have to trust in their innate goodness. We will guide them and we can show them the way, and we're going to be showing them the way 500, 1,000 times in the same day. And it takes a lot of patience, and it's hard work, and we do get angry sometimes. We will lose our temper sometimes. We will get angry, we will overreact, we will say things that we regret, we will do things we will regret, and we will feel probably deep shame when we do these things. But we are human and we make mistakes, and the makeup after that, the redo or the making up, and how we rebuild a relationship with our child after an episode like that, is where the real learning can take place. So what did I want to say? So yeah, we've said anger comes from this place of powerlessness. And in young children, particularly, anger, lashing out, that comes from a place of not being understood. So anger in young children can come out in an aggressive way. So it seems like, and Harry's a really good example of this, my son. He's really very, very physical. And his response when he seeks connection and he doesn't know how to, he will jump on you and give you a great big cuddle, or like grab you around the neck. And it's super, super frustrating, because he often ends up hurting someone. He'll end up hurting me, or he'll end up hurting Olivia, or he'll end up hurting the cat. And then someone will get annoyed with him, and then he'll get angry, and so he lashes out. So what he has is this sense of powerlessness, this sense of being misunderstood. He wants to connect. He doesn't know how to do that appropriately. He's only 4.5. So he jumps on somebody. He ends up hurting them. They get angry with him, so he feels ashamed. So he ends up being aggressive back. And so this spiral goes round and round. And this has been such a light bulb moment for me when, and fairly recently, like in the past month, that each of us have different ways of connecting, of expressing our frustration. So when I feel frustrated, I shout. When Harry feels frustrated, he gets aggressive. And when Olivia gets frustrated, I hate this word, but she whines. She uses this sort of whinging voice or moaning voice. And all three of us are expressing frustration and expressing powerlessness in that moment, a sense of helplessness in that moment. But we all express it in a different way. And the language I use with the children now is when, so what will happen is that a normal scenario is that Harry will start being aggressive with Olivia, and then she will start whinging, she will start whining, and if I try and interrupt and try and stop them, it doesn't work, because it just means that I'm always the caretaker, I'm always the referee, I'm always being the police, and if I step back, then they'll actually hurt each other badly, and that doesn't seem to work either. So what I what I've started doing is literally narrating what's going on. So Harry will jump on Olivia and it will be too much for her. So she'll start, as I say, she'll start whining. So I will say, it looks like Harry really wants to connect with you and he can't find the right words. And then I'll say to Olivia, when she starts whining, what you could say to Harry is, hang on, it's gone out of my head. What you could say to Harry is, I see you want a cuddle. Let's have a cuddle. And then you can roll back into your bed or what have you. This usually happens at bedtime because he rolls over and wants a big cuddle. And so thank you for your comment, Total Life. I'll come to that in a moment. So basically just reframing. I've lost my train of thought with the whole narration story. So basically I say out loud what's actually going on. So I'll say that Harry wants to connect and he doesn't know how to. Olivia wants to say that she doesn't want that right now and she doesn't know how to. So they just get into this cycle. So I narrate what's going on. And I say that for myself as well. So if I've shouted at them and I'll afterwards when we're doing a redo, I'll say, I couldn't find the right words and so I shouted and I apologize and what have you, but I focus on how I'm taking responsibility to say I couldn't find the right words at the time. So I shouted and that wasn't okay. And when Harry can't find the right words, he gets aggressive. When Olivia can't find the right words, she starts whinging. And so this, I've noticed over the period of literally just a couple of weeks, has made such a difference because they're both starting to use different language with each other. And for Harry, what's happening, he'll do that first jump where he'll go to kick or hit or what have you. And I'll say to him straight away, Harry, it looks like you need to connect. And he'll say almost instantly, 2 seconds later, oh, I'm feeling sad, or I need a cuddle, or I couldn't find the right word. So he's correcting himself. We're not quite there before the action, but we're there after like 2-3 seconds of it happening. And then Olivia, again, she's saying, if she says one sentence in that voice, I'll say, hang on, it sounds like there's something not quite right for you, sweet girl. What's going on? It sounds like you want to connect with me. And then straight away, she'll say so clearly what the problem is. She'll say, oh, I'm feeling sad, or I'm feeling really tired and hungry, or whatever it is. So it's really, really effective. If we can narrate, it really takes like noticing what our children's triggers are and what their behaviors are in each moment. And that can really, really help. And then we can respond in a way that's going to serve our child, because we're recasting what's going on. We're narrating it, so we're seeing the best part of our child. We're seeing their innate goodness in that moment. And we are narrating what's going on. So over time, they're hearing this message, their message, and the other children are hearing that same message that there's nothing wrong with me. This is normal. This is a reaction. And over time, I'm going to learn how to control this a little bit better. But it's we want to take the shame out of it. That's how anger becomes destructive, because when it becomes shame, then they come in a loop. And Total Life has just made a comment about anger and shame, and so I'm going to read out his or her message. I think I can see from your photo it's a lady. So the message is, I've noticed that my patience has been so thin, and my anger is growing a lot. It's brought me to tears. I also find that I grab my son and I shake him kind of then to make it playful, because then I realise what I'm doing. It's so frustrating and bubbles up. There's so much inner child work needed. I really, really, really feel for you, and thank you for sharing that, because I've had that situation myself, and I understand the shame. And as I say, maybe about 3 years ago for about 18 months, 3 years ago for about 18 months, 2 years, yeah, it was really, really bad. I was in that place, and I completely agree about the shaking. I've been there and I've done that, and it's really, really hard, because you get into this cycle of shame afterwards about how you've behaved. And as you said, inner child work is really, really, really what's at the root of this, and that can be really, really painful, the inner child work, because we have to delve into our childhood, and we have to delve into things we don't necessarily want to delve in, and then it becomes, and there's a point of acceptance, or not acceptance, acknowledgement of the things that did happen to our childhood, which our parents were doing the best that they could. I'm not saying they could have done anything any differently, but it might not have been right for you. And I found that a really, really difficult process, a difficult thing to come to terms with, to hold those two truths, that everything that happened was done from love, but it wasn't quite right for me. And these are the ways that it has impacted my life now as an adult, and the relationships I've had and what have you. So it's really, really deep and difficult work, and it's something to go really, really slowly on, and it's something to be really, really compassionate, because you do uncover things. For me, journaling really, really helped, and I don't know if you journal, but writing it all down. When something comes up, just writing it down and not expecting an answer to come, but writing it down. Meditation really, really helped. Doing chakra work, working on the root chakra, that's really, really helpful as well. You can find on YouTube the frequency of the root chakra. Just Google that, and then I listen to that every evening for an hour and a half for like a month, to really kind of get my sense of stability and grounding when I started doing this deep work. And that really, really helped. It helped me find my strength within, and helped me find this foundation from which I could build everything else on top of it. And practices, I mean, you mentioned that you're doing inner child work already, but things that we can do in the moment when it's all gone really, really crazy and it's really, really hard. So the first thing I do is I focus on the physical sensation that I'm feeling in my body. So as soon as I notice it, that I'm really, really angry, I notice where in my body I can feel it. For me, like totally, it's my jaw, like here, and I really clench and grind my teeth, so I can feel it. And that, for me, feels like a quantum leap in awareness, to know actually where I feel it in my body. And then here, like in my neck and my shoulders as well, which I think is probably the same for everyone, the jaw and the neck and the shoulders. And it's really, that can be really, really freeing, because once I locate it in my body and I've just got that awareness, I'm like, okay, I can release that, and I'll just start, rubbing my jaw or my neck or what have you in the moment. And I'm not trying to make it go away. I'm not trying to rationalize it. I'm not trying to think about it. I'm not trying to think my way out of it. Because the thing about anger, because it's such a physical feeling, it's not something we can think our way out of. We can't rationalize or think our way out of it. What we can do is feel it and allow that to travel through our body. And then it sort of naturally dissipates, or we integrate it, one of the two. If we try and suppress it, or hide from it, or deny that it's there, then it builds up, and then it turns into so many other difficulties and chronic illness and things in the body later on. And when we can release it in the moment, and this is such a powerful practice to teach to children as well, if we can release it in the moment, like feel where it is in the body, literally. I went through a stage of having this crazy, like burning sensation in my hands and my arms. This was, again, about 3 years ago. And it was so, so painful. And there wasn't anything wrong with me. I think it was just all this rage that needed to come out of my body. There wasn't anything wrong with me medically, and I used to go and see this lady who would give me a hand massage every weekend, every Friday, because my hands were so, so painful from all this anger I kept inside. And I didn't realize I had any anger issues until this started, and my body was telling me so, so clearly that what was going on inside me. So if we can, when we know that we're really angry, when we've shouted at our child, or we've shook our child, or whatever we've done, we've been out of control, the first thing that we can do is come out of our head and just feel it in our body. Just say to ourselves, I'm really angry, and feel it in our body. Just try and locate it. And we can do this, right in front of our child. We don't need to go away and do it. If you've got a young child, it's not possible to leave them on their own anyway. So just there, locate it. Don't try and do anything else just to feel that feeling in your body. Where is it? When you lean into that feeling, when you feel that feeling, what color is that feeling of anger? What texture is it? Mine was always really black and like scratchy, like a big tangled up like mess of like loads of different knots, like a ball of wool, but a really tangled ball of wool. And it was kind of like really scratchy, like sandpaper as well. I can't really describe it. That's what it really, really felt like. And it was black, really, really thick and black. And just feeling those textures and really going, feeling those sensations of that, really going into that and leaning into it, all of the feelings of it, the range of feelings that you have and the physical sensations. And that sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? To lean into it rather than move away from it. But the more we lean into it initially, then we can help it dissipate. And this is a practice that I keep doing. I keep doing every time something comes up. I lean into it and I feel it. And it doesn't matter whether it's sadness or anger or rejection or anything that I feel. And also the positive emotions as well. When I feel joy and when I feel love and when I feel happiness and when I feel lightness and clarity and flow, all of those things I feel in my body as well. This sense of really feeling, it's called embodiment, this sense of really experiencing everything, the full range within our body, coming out of our head and feeling in our body, rather than trying to rationalize it. This is just such a helpful practice. And we can do that with our children from a young age. Instead of telling them how they're feeling, like you're feeling angry or you're feeling sad, much more effective practice and useful practice for children would be to actually help them feel it in their body, locate that feeling. My children at the moment are feeling sad, and when one of them says, "Oh, I'm feeling sad," and I'll say, "Tell me where you feel that in your body," straight away. And both of them say, "It's in my heart is aching," which just absolutely kills me when they say that. But that we're starting to, because we use it in everyday life, to have this embodiment, to feel in their bodies before we put vocabulary to it, before we try and rationalize it, before we try and think positive thoughts. Go into the depth of that feeling in the body, the sensation. I love that expression, feelings of feelings. Feelings are called feelings because we're meant to feel them. Go into that feeling really intensely initially, and then we'll be able to release it. And then what's really amazing is that we find that it passes. It can be, obviously children are instantaneous and it goes straight away, but for us as adults, I found the more that I lean into these unpleasant emotions that I don't want to be feeling, the more I feel them in my body, the more that I can accept them and integrate them, release them, and thus then heal them. The more quickly they dissipate. I don't have them hanging around. You know that kind of tape player that goes in your head when you're just regurgitating the same situation over and over again, and you wish you had said something different or did something different. I find that since I'm doing this practice of really feeling into and leaning into these feelings, is that I don't have that tape player on repeat as much as I used to. So I'd love to hear anyone else's thoughts on that and their own practices, and how you get on with feeling in those feelings into your body. And with children, my children are 4 and 6, but I started talking about actually feeling their body, feeling the feelings in their body a couple of years ago. They don't need to be grown up. They don't need to fully understand it to get this concept. It's something that we practice on a daily basis, or whenever we need to, as regularly as possible. And it's a concept that they internalize because we're living and breathing it. It's not something we need to teach directly. It's something that we need to role model. What's that great expression? Words don't teach, only actions teach. If we practice dealing with our strong emotions in this way, outwardly, openly with our children, then they are going to absorb that that's the way things are done. We don't need to be strategic and teach them about it. We can just show them through the power of how we live, how we deal with these emotions. Let me see what else there is on my bullet points. also what a really powerful thing to do with children and for yourself when you're really, really angry. Lie on the floor or lie on the bed and just bang your fists like this really, really hard into the bed or the floor, and smack your feet into the floor. So bend your legs at the knee, so your soles of your feet are flat on the floor, and like stamp your feet and bang your fist on the floor or the mattress if you're lying on the bed, and go ah at the same time. Do this with your children as well. Whenever any of you have this anger, you're feeling frustrated. We've been doing it for the past couple of nights, literally just before we go to bed, just in bed, just before we go to sleep, because we have these sort of altercations at bedtime when everyone's tired and we all fall out with each other pretty much most nights. And when that frustration and anger builds up, I just say, I just need to get it all out. And then when we all do it together, all three of us, it's so cathartic because it makes us laugh. It's really, really ridiculous that all of us lying in a row going, banging our feet in our hands and screaming and shouting. And then it releases it all. And again, it's just this positive role model that we're setting, that anger is nothing to be ashamed of. The problem we have with, sorry, my low battery thing just came on. Total Life, that's a really good point. Her message says, it's funny because I find myself doing that, and then when I see my son doing it, I want him to stop, but that's a great idea to do it together. How old's your son? Hang on, I can't really see that well from your picture, but maybe he looks about 3 or 4. It's such a great idea to do with children. And again, it's this thought of, are we comfortable with our children showing anger? It feels so confronting when our children, I mean, my daughter's almost 7, and, when she's rude to me, when I perceive to be disrespectful, in the old school disrespectful, right? It still triggers me massively, I still have a big problem with this, and I still have to wind my neck in and speak to myself, that I'm being ridiculous. I'm being a child. She's being a child, but she's allowed to be a child. I'm 44. I'm not allowed to be a child. It's so confronting when our children are angry, when our children are angry with us, when they say that they hate us, when they are rude to us. My Harry's going through a spitting stage, and honestly, it sends me into the next dimension, this stratosphere of annoyance, or I should say it used to. But now when he does that, when he do the spitting, and when this goes back to the narration, I say, Harry, I know there must be something bothering you for you to be spitting. Tell me what's happening for you. I know you can't find the right words, or you must be really angry to be spitting. I know you don't want to do that. What can I do to help? Or even, I've been saying a lot recently, it's okay to be angry. I understand. It's okay to be angry. What can I do to help? And that just completely shifts it. If, imagine how powerful it would be if we have a partner, in our romantic relationship, if we're really, really angry and we're shouting and we're frustrated, a partner who doesn't get angry with us, they could actually say to us, it's okay to be angry. What can I do to help? Or I'm here to help you, or I'm here to listen to what you have to say. That would be so, so powerful, to have someone who sees us and hears us and validates us in that way. And it's the same with our children, to be so, so validated that even when they're really, really angry, that we still see them, we still hear them, we're still witnessing them. We see them as they truly are. We trust their innate goodness, no matter how badly they're behaving. I love that quote, when children are at their worst, are behaving at their worst, that's when they need the most love, or something like that. They need the most love and acceptance when they're behaving at their worst. Because every fibre in our body will most likely want to punish or reject or shout back if they're being rude to us, or they're being angry, or they're hitting us. It's natural, because when we're met with anger or aggression, we want to retaliate. But we can definitely change this pattern if we, doing all the things we've described, we can release our own anger, and we can let our child see that we're doing that. We can see where it feels in our body. We can role model doing that with our child. And I don't want to talk about too much now, so I've really whittled on for a long time. We can release the color and breathe into the color and the texture of our anger. We can release it and we can talk about it. We can talk about what happened. As I said, narrate, when I feel angry, I shout. I can't find the right words, and so I shout. It's not okay for me to shout at you. It's not your fault. It's my fault. Taking responsibility and apologizing for when things go wrong. But this feels to be such a big generational shift of us, apologizing to our children when we do make a mistake. We're not pretending to be perfect. We are being human, and we're being real, and we're admitting when we make mistakes. And so that, I think, is a really powerful shift that's happening at the moment, or has happened in this generation, and is happening at the moment with parents. So that's a really, really big quantum leap. So I think that's really, really positive. Yeah, your son's going to be 4 in November, total life. Yeah, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. My son Harry's 4.5. And we just find it hilarious to do the stamping and the banging together. And then depending on, there'll be times where we will do the stamping and banging together, and then we'll talk about where the anger is in our body. And they're both understanding. I can take that conversation further with them, because we've talked about this a lot. We talk about the full range of feelings, a lot, about where we can feel that in our bodies. We can talk about where that feeling of anger came from, what's underneath it. Well, actually, I'm feeling sad because of this person isn't here, or our cat went missing actually for 3 weeks, and then he came back, and when he was missing, we were all really upset, and everyone was a little bit more irritable with each other. And so we can talk about that. When Mummy Cat wasn't here, we really, really missed him. And so when we were angry, actually maybe underneath we were feeling sad that we missed him. And that's how it comes out in our bodies. That's how we show it. It doesn't come out. We don't find the right words to say it, so we just hit someone, or we shout at someone instead. Explaining all of this, it helps them to understand their inner landscape, and it's so, so powerful. And it's part of creating a more peaceful and harmonious world. If we can help our children to understand how they're feeling in their bodies, and then what our mind tells us is not actually right. What our body tells us, what we feel is more is truer than anything else, because our mind is usually filled with everyone else's thoughts and everyone else's opinions, right? But our body never lies. When we can tune into it, if we keep our children tuned into their bodies. So children learn with all 5 of their senses in the first 6 to 7 years of life. So their body, they're a whole great big feeling machine in the first 6 to 7 years of life. Where as they move into more, the intellectual mind is between 6 and 12 in Dr. Montessori terms. And as we move into the more intellectual stage, then children generally are less active, they're less in their bodies, and their brain is being used, brain processing is being used in different ways, and so they lose this contact with their bodies. But we can help them maintain this contact and this feeling and becoming aware of the sensations if we encourage them to feel what they're feeling in their heart, in their belly. Things like meditation practices, mindful practices, focusing on the sensation in their body, the feeling in their body, before going to the verbal explanation, before going to the vocabulary. That's what's really, really powerful. And it is as powerful for us as it is for them. So just feel everything, feel the full range. Feeling the full range, particularly anger and despair or overwhelm, or all of those things, feeling that full range when we are hurting, when we are upset, when it's really, really painful. This is really, really hard work, and it's going really, really slowly, and it's working with our inner child, trying to see always, what does my inner child need now? Why did I get so angry? What does my inner child need? Was I just feeling really, really stressed and no one ever meets my needs? Everyone's always asking me to do things the whole time and no one's ever meeting my needs. That is a serious frustration for a stay-at-home parent, because you're running around in circles the whole time, seemingly for everyone else, but who gets to look after you? Who gets to nourish you? Who gets to take some of your load off? Who gets to just be with you or nurture you or love you or appreciate you or validate you? Very often that doesn't happen when we're parents of young children. We're either running from the office to home and feeling guilty about being in the office, or stay at home all day. We don't feel we have another life. We don't have another identity. And that's really hard work as well. They're both really, really hard work in different ways, but we can still feel unseen. And that's when our inner child starts running the show of, I want to be validated, I want to be seen, I want to be heard. And then our anger can come out in explosive ways. And again, as I said at the beginning, this is not from a point of shame. I have my own relationship and journey with anger. I didn't realize I had any anger issues until it became very clear to me that I did. And there's all this repressed stuff and work I had to do about my own sense of powerlessness and my own sense of vulnerability and my own frustration. And so it's a journey. So just be really, really gentle with yourselves as you travel on this journey. If anyone has any other questions, please do fire away. Otherwise, I'll just check my bullet points that we haven't missed anything. I think that's everything. And a child who is being, a young child who's being aggressive, or any child that's being aggressive, anyone that's being aggressive, it's just that they're misunderstood. They don't feel that being heard or seen or validated. And particularly with young children, we can see, and particularly with boys, and I recognize from seeing it with Harry, straight away, him hitting something with a stick, I immediately see as aggression. And it isn't necessarily that, a lot of the time. It's just him experimenting. It's experimenting with what the noise is, experimenting with what that feels like. He's a very, very physical child. And if I label everything as aggression when it's not, I'm really doing him a disservice, and I'm really, really limiting him, because I'm projecting my own uncomfortable feelings about anger and my own wounds on him about how he should be behaving. And it's really, really unhealthy, and it's something that I'm really working hard on to accept the physical nature of who he is, and not jump to conclusions that he's being aggressive all the time when he's not. When I know, because he's very, very articulate when we take the time to discuss things and feel things in the body. He's very, very articulate and can explain very clearly what's going on. And he'll even say, I wasn't doing this, I wasn't doing that, I wasn't hurting anyone, I just wanted to feel this, or I'm feeling sad, or it didn't feel good in my body, or I couldn't find the right words to say. It's trust in our child's innate goodness. See that Dr. Montessori has the quote, the child is new every day. Just see every child through the eyes of love. See our child through the eyes of love every single day. And that means our own children, that means our inner child as well. The only way we can sort of heal our pain or our wounds is being really, really compassionate. Because if we don't, we're just going to keep repeating the same patterns and have the same lesson delivered to us and the same pain, and we're never going to feel seen and validated. Hi Ray, thank you for your comment. Ray says, I just jumped in, this is very enlightening. Will this be saved somewhere where I can watch the full thing? Yes, Ray, you can. I will, after this, I'll download it. And then I will upload it, and it will be with the captions as well. I don't upload it straight away because I need to download it to my laptop, and then I can re-upload it, and that will be with captions for anyone who's non-hearing will be able to read it as well. So that will take me about half an hour afterwards, but it'll be uploaded this evening. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. Does anyone else have any other questions? I'm going to have some more of my tea. Thank you for the hearts. You ever sending hearts? So anger causes us a lot of shame. It can cause us a lot of guilt, and no one really talks about it in the parenting circles, other than something about shame. But for sure, whenever we feel anger, it's a feeling of threatened or powerlessness. Hey Nada, and it comes from our own childhood. This feeling of not feeling seen or heard or met. And, you know, the thing that really triggered me and my inner child, for me to do a lot of inner child work, was having a 2-year-old and a newborn. That was when I first saw it in the first year of after Harry was born, so that was 2017. But it was only in 2018 that there was a tipping point, and I just didn't feel very well anymore, like in my head, in my body, and I just knew that there was something a lot deeper that was going on, that I needed to look, I needed to dig and find out what that was. And it's been a journey, and it's still a journey I'm working on. As I said, I really screamed at Harry yesterday, and that wasn't okay. One of the practices actually we did, because we had a really difficult afternoon yesterday afternoon, one of the things we did before we went to bed is, because we all really shouted at each other, and obviously I felt so much shame and so much guilt for really shouting at Harry, is we did that banging on the bed thing to release it all just before we went to sleep. And that really, really helped them all relax, and they were so relaxed afterwards. I did that and then played the tongue drum for them. When I say play, I'm not a professional, I mean literally just like tapping it like that. So just really, all you need to know is, if anger was unacceptable, to show anger, to display anger was unacceptable when you were growing up, or it was okay for the adults to show it, but not okay for you to show it, then there's going to be stuff for you to unpack and unpick that. But go really, really slowly, and just notice, sort of try and feel, what does my inner child need? When I get completely out of control and I'm full of rage, and there's one comment earlier, when I shake my child, actually, what do I need right now? What does 8-year-old Charlotte need? What does 4-year-old Charlotte need? I feel powerless, so what do I need now? I need to feel seen and feel validated. And this is all of our path of doing that for ourselves. And it's a long process. Thank you so much for joining. I've really talked for far too long this evening. Thanks so much for joining, everyone, for all of your comments, and I will speak to you soon. And this is going to be an interesting series with someone who is an expert in nonviolent communication and in internal family systems. I think I'm freezing. Hello? What's happened? Is everyone still there? I don't really know what's happening. I will carry on and say that, yes, with internal family systems, which is a therapy where we look at the different parts of ourselves, the angry parts, the scared parts, the joyful parts, the protector parts. So I'm going to be speaking to a specialist, an expert in this area, and that's going to be able to, and how I combine NVC and internal family systems with my children and the practices that I do. So I'm really looking forward to that. And keep sending in your questions as ever. Thanks so much for joining. Bye-bye.